If looks could kill. We've all heard that expression before, but what does it even mean? For the most part, I've always heard it when someone is given a look of pure hatred at someone else. But what is the origins of that phrase? I'm not going to pretend to know, and that isn't actually where I'm going with today's story. But we do have a case of someone that seemingly could get away with anything simply because of her looks, even getting away with murder. That was back in the late 1700s. But even so, people said that Becky Cotton wasn't deterred by that brush with the law and continued to use her looks and charms to seduce men to their end even after that. And some people say Becky Cotton still does that, even today. Everyone loves a good, strange, weird, or bizarre story. Well, welcome to the American South, where dark legends and haunted history lurk around every corner. Where superstition, folklore, and a touch of backwoods magic blend with everyday culture. Some say, in order to survive. This is Dixie After Dark. Rebecca Kennedy was born around 1765 in a settlement that would become Edgefield, South Carolina. She was the only daughter of James Kennedy and prized in her father's eyes. Rebecca's mother, whose name is lost to history, died when Rebecca was just a child, and John Kennedy went on to raise his children as a devoted single father. Rebecca's father became her whole world. She was the quintessential daddy's girl, even after growing up and becoming married herself. Rebecca Kennedy grew up to become a beautiful young woman, one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful, in all of Edgefield and beyond. In 1785, Rebecca married a man named John Cotton. And even though she was prepared now to start a family of her own, the young couple didn't move that far away. They stayed within walking distance of her beloved father, James Kennedy. History doesn't give us much else for young Becky's life until a few years later in 1791. Becky's father, James, got caught up in a land dispute, and 3 of his neighbors showed up at his door to kill him. James did manage to escape the mob, though, and fled through his fields to seek refuge at the closest house he could find, that of his daughter, Becky Cotton. James frantically tried to explain what was happening to his daughter and son-in-law, but as he did, the front door of the Cotton home burst open. The 3 neighbors had followed James Kennedy there and shot him dead on the spot, right in front of his daughter Becky. And Becky's husband, John Cotton, legend says he didn't do a damn thing about it. Becky Cotton's whole world was destroyed in a single gunshot, right there in front of her. And even though she was distraught with grief, she began harboring thoughts of revenge almost immediately. As time went on, Becky's strong will and resilience helped her to manage and cope with her grief. But as far as the thoughts of revenge, she didn't even try. She fed those thoughts and emotions, letting them grow and fester for nearly 3 whole years. Pure hatred and revenge consumed her mind all that time, growing and growing, until Becky Cotton could contain it no longer. Late one afternoon in 1794, Becky was out gathering an armload of firewood from their pile so it would be on hand by the fireplace later that night and the next morning. It had been a particularly hard day for her, with memories of her father plaguing her mind. Becky paused as something caught her eye, and in that moment, she knew what needed to be done. She looked back at her home and caught the silhouette of her husband John passing by a window. Her husband that had tried to comfort her through those times and help her move on, encouraged her that life must continue. The same man that had not lifted a single finger when her beloved father was gunned down in their own home like a dog. In Becky's mind, John Cotton was nothing more than a coward. Sure, she harbored hatred for the men that had killed her father, but over the years, it was John Cotton that drew her ire. Becky Cotton dropped the armload of firewood on the spot and marched back toward her home to wait, snatching the long-handled axe from its chopping block as she passed by. Becky waited until John had fallen asleep that night. Once she was sure that he was good and asleep, she rose from bed, retrieved the axe that she had hidden inside the home, and swung it down on John's defenseless head in one fell swoop. It's said that John Cotton died almost instantly. Becky Cotton then got dressed and went to her brother David's home. She convinced him to help her drag John's body to hide it in a potato vault, and then Becky Cotton fled into the night. She didn't get far, though. She was later captured in nearby Kings Mountain and brought back to Edgefield to stand trial for the murder of her own husband. But during the trial, it's said that the all-male jury could not see past Becky Cotton's beauty and charm, especially when she took the stand and testified for herself. In the end, she was acquitted of all charges. Becky even went on to marry one of those jurors, a man named Major Ellis, as well as defeating a second trial over the ownership of her father's estate against her own father-in-law, Thomas Cotton. Major Ellis, the new husband, was a prominent landowner in the area and a widower. He had 2 young daughters from his previous marriage, and Becky set out to marry them off as quick as possible to cut them out of any inheritance. One of the daughters married a man named Tom Jones. The other daughter, she married one of Becky's own brothers, Stephen Kennedy. Stephen was wise to his sister's dealings, though, as well as her past, and it never left a good taste in his mouth. The idea of Becky, someone cut from the same flesh and blood line as he was, getting away with murder never did sit right with him. The idea haunted him all those years. Then, on May 5th, 1807, Stephen Kennedy was walking through town and spotted his sister Becky on the courthouse steps, flirting with some random man that was much younger than her. By this time, rumors of Becky being pretty open with various men had been going on around town, some of which had become presumed missing. Stephen Kennedy knew what his sister was capable of and feared the worst. He also knew nothing good could come from this. So, with no hesitation, Stephen Kennedy picked up a large stone, ran up to his sister, and bashed her in the side of the head. Stephen then fled, leaving his own sister lying on the courtroom steps in a pool of her own blood. Becky Cotton would die just minutes later. Stephen gathered up his wife and kids, and the family fled out west. There's no record of him ever being caught or tried for the murder of Becky Cotton. A lot of this was lost to history until recently, when Stephen Kennedy's grave was found in Mississippi, inspiring descendants to start researching the family story. In that research, much of this account was found recorded in an old pamphlet written by a traveling preacher named Mason Locke Weems, entitled The Bad Wife's Looking Glass, or God's Revenge Against Cruelty to Husbands. It was written in 1810, just 3 years after the death of Becky Cotton. In it, Weems concludes his sermon with, "The Lord have mercy upon old Edgefield. For sure it must be pandemonium itself, a very district of devils." The grave of Becky Cotton herself has yet to be discovered, but while alive, though, Becky Cotton lived next to Beaver Dam Creek. The area now sits beneath Slade Lake, a small 36-acre man-made fishing lake. But before the existence of this lake, Beaver Dam Creek held legends of Becky Cotton. There was a deep hole in the creek that became known as Beck's Hole, named for Becky Cotton herself. According to legend, Beck's Hole is where Becky Cotton would dispose of the bodies of former lovers, those, quote, presumed missing that the historical accounts alluded to earlier. Local legends attribute the names of 2 other men's deaths to Becky Cotton. Some legends call them husbands, others don't. But even though there is no historical account of other marriages, these men are still named. One was Erasmus Smith, who was said to have been killed by Becky Cotton when she drove a mattress needle into his heart while he slept in a chair by the fire. The other man, Joshua Terry, was said to have been given a deadly dose of nightshade in his herbal tea. Legend says that Becky Cotton dragged these men to Beaver Dam Creek and dumped them into the depths of Beck's Hole, weighed down by bricks. No bodies were ever recovered. The location of Beck's Hole was the deepest point of Beaver Dam Creek, and remains the deepest part of Slade Lake. Locals claim that even today, the moans and cries of these men can still be heard coming from the depths of Beck's Hole. The spirit of Becky Cotton is said to still roam the land around the lake too, the land that was once hers. There's been sightings of a beautiful woman in a dark dress wandering the shores of the lake at night, or early in the morning fog by fishermen and such. A figure of extreme grace and beauty, yet oddly out of place in the way that she's dressed. There's many tales of boaters creeping closer to better see this strange beauty, yet she seems to appear and disappear through the fog and mist, luring boaters deeper and deeper into the lake, always toward the location of Beck's Hole. They say that Becky Cotton is still out there, searching for her next husband, searching for her next victim. Where's all my "I can fix her" bros at? Well, best of luck to you.